dog whistling today is no longer about interracial sex.
Well, sometimes it is, I'm telling you.
Yeah, but in terms of politicians, I feature in the book in the 1700s, 1800s, the dog whistling was explicitly about interracial sex. Right. The whole word miscegenation was part of a political hoax. They made up this pamphlet. It was fake news to prevent Abraham Lincoln from getting reelected in 1864. They came up with this fake pamphlet advocating for miscegenation, made to look as if it was part of Lincoln's platform. Yeah. So dog whistling used to be about interracial sex. But now, really I think dog whistling today in the political sphere, I think it's about playing on people's fears about the loss of centrality of whiteness, right? When you say make America great again, that's a nostalgic way of alluding to this idea of an America where whites were still in charge. I didn't see Donald Trump dog whistle about interracial sex, except when he did begin his candidacy by casting Mexicans as rapists. Right. So there was a little bit of that. But the broader subtext of his dog whistling had to do with anti-immigrant, they're taking over, get them out.
Immigration security is national security. ISIS is torturing, murdering, executing, and exterminating people in a campaign of genocide. And what is Hillary Clinton suggesting? Let's let more people come in.
When they constructed white supremacy, they had this fiction of white racial purity that they're trying to protect in individuals. But they also had this idea that the country and citizenry, those who get to be citizens and vote, should only be white people.
I've actually had the opportunity to interview some of the philosophical descendants. They kind of call themselves the alt-right. They're thrilled with the Donald Trump Make America Great Again theme. They run around with these flyers saying, white women do not date outside the race. White women stop dating outside the race. You are sullying yourself. It's funny how this just continues. Dylan Roof.
He said they're raping our women.
Yes.
I'm not surprised to hear what you're telling me about how this is among, more the recruiting dogma that this idea is bandied about by some men on the alt-right.
I mean, it's what's bringing the young boys and men along. Mm-hmm. So Dylan Roof, he killed those 9 people at Mother Emanuel Church, I think days before Donald Trump announced. So it's not on Donald Trump. It's not on Donald Trump at all. What I'm saying is that these children who are ingesting terror propaganda that was created to justify mass murder, political murder 150 years ago, 130 years ago, they're ingesting it today.
Right.
And it's still powerful.
I mean, that is shocking. And let me say, I wasn't singling out Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. He's just part of a continuum. This dog whistling I'm talking about has been going on for centuries. Right. He's just part of the latest iteration of it. Right. We're only going to put this ideology to bed when a critical mass of folks, particularly a critical mass of white folks, stands up and says, I reject this, and I want to be part of the coalition that dismantles the structures of supremacy. Throughout the centuries that we've had this color line, there's always been some people that crossed the line and fought against it. And I celebrate a lot of those people. And what gives me some hope about this country is I think we're in what's called a geometric progression. And those of you who are math majors, geometric progression, when it's plotted on a visual, it goes like this, right? Mm. I think we're sort of like here, right? And my analogy is to what happened with we got to a geometric progression in attitudes about same-sex marriage. We went in 5 years from a country where a majority of people opposed it to a majority of people support. I think we're in the throes of a geometric progression.
You want to talk about California? You write about that in your...
Yeah. So California in the late 80s was in a position that's kind of similar to where the country is. It was majority white but transitioning fast, and in a 20-year period, California goes from majority white to gridlocked to majority minority to functional in its politics, right? Pete Wilson, when he was running for re-election in 1994, he had a kind of mean-spirited anti-immigrant platform that was not dissimilar to some of Trump's rhetoric.
Illegal immigration is one of the hot issues on California's election ballot this year. Politicians like Republican Governor Pete Wilson say it's a problem the state cannot afford not to solve.
300,000 illegal immigrant children in public schools, and they keep coming. The cost, $1.5 billion a year.
It's unfair to the people.
Wilson believes he has touched a nerve. He is backing Proposition 187, which would deny illegal immigrants services like health care and public education for their children.
Blaming immigrants for California's recession and Prop 87, all this stuff, which was hugely popular. Well, within 20 years, it's a political non-starter in that state. Any kind of that mean-spirited, dog-whistling, divide and conquer, you could not get elected to any statewide office. What Governor Wilson did was he accelerated a process on the part of liberal-leaning whites of kind of seeing this politics and rejecting it. He also accelerated engagement in politics among some of the fastest growing populations in that state. And so Latinos and Asians, like, I'm going to register to vote, and I'm not only going to register to vote, I'm going to run for office. California today is retreating from the war on drugs, investing more in education, pursuing more progressive taxation, leading on climate change. Political scientists called it a coalition of the ascendant, right? A critical mass of whites and people of color ascended and became a dominant majority together. It's an example of what functional multiracial politics looks like. So the legislature, policy debates are not based on a clash of worldviews. It's based on, the facts and what makes for good public policy. I think the election of 2016 and a lot of that mean-spirited rhetoric is accelerating seeing by a lot of whites, being able to see and name racism, and also accelerated engagement by a lot of groups that are offended by his scapegoating. And then the other thing I talk about is even just having a friend of another race raises the probability, particularly if that friend is black, of having empathy for what black people face. And empathy in turn raises the probability of you being angry about it and being inclined to engage in collective action. Something like 60% of white people under 30 agree with the Black Lives Matter's critique of law enforcement, right? And so interracial intimacy is taking off in this country.
And it doesn't have to be sexual.
Right.
Yeah.
Dating, friendship, marriage, adoption. There's more and more possibilities, particularly if you live in a dense metropolitan area, for you to practice pluralism and develop some empathy about what people outside your tribe face. And I think this is growing exponentially. So the country, I think, could feel very different in 10 or 20 years. But, my argument is that it needs to be paired with activism. You can't just sit and wait for the change you want to see. My hero, Frederick Douglass, who's right there on the wall.
How's he doing, by the way?
But he always said, you got to agitate. You got to have your vision for what you want to bring in, but the agitator's burden. You never get to stop fighting for your vision for this country.